Douglas Herbert from our International Affairs Desk joins me here on set. Doug, first of all, the Prime Minister saying they're fighting these kinds of attacks, but clearly it's not working. Well, it's not working effectively.
The government, let's to be sure, Edouard Philippe put this 69% spike figure on in a Facebook post, and he was sort of sounding an alarm in doing so. And he said in this post that he's very concerned that, France, we are very far from finished with anti-Semitism, as he said, 80 years after Kristallnacht. The government did not give a specific reason for why you had this rise. And as you correctly noted, there had been a drop-off in these anti-Semitic incidents. And when I say incidents, that's a euphemism, because we're talking about two categories here. We're talking about threats. We're talking about things about scrawling swastikas on synagogue doors, on Jewish businesses, on doors of Jewish houses, so on and so forth, going from threats to actual real violence, whether it's beating people up, murder, all sorts of other violent attacks. So it's a broad category. He said one of the things the government, the Interior Minister, you could perhaps speculate is that they have encouraged more people to report these type of anti-Semitic incidents. And there's even now an online portal in France where you can directly report to police. So in a sense, digital technology and a government campaign to encourage reporting of the incidents, you could argue has maybe accounted for some of the rise, hardly not all of it. Look, depending on which side you ask, there's always different versions of the story. There's no absolute truth here. Jewish community will point out that a lot of the hostility that they've had, a lot of the incidents they've had, have come from a lot of the low-income, the poorer French suburbs, which happen to be overwhelmingly often inhabited by Muslim population in France. There's about 400,000 Jews in France. There aren't official statistics on this. About 5.7 million Muslims. Each of those communities being the largest of their respective populations in Europe. Now look, what the Muslim community says, Muslim leaders have openly, publicly acknowledged. They said, yes, there are definitely some imams among us here in France that have stoked and fueled radicalism, but they have time and again warned against stigmatizing the vast majority of Muslims who they say are moderate and just as outraged as the rest of French society with these attacks against Jews. The violent incidents, by the way, all of these numbers come within the broader context of violent hate crimes in general, against Jews, also anti-Muslim crimes, and also just violent hate crimes of other natures. What can France do? They can step up. They can help teachers who are targeted in schools of anti-Semitic attacks. They can step up the fight online against potential hate speech online. And they're also instituting a national team that would be ready to intervene in schools in cases where there is fears of anti-Semitic attacks or violence.
Now, Doug, as I mentioned, this is the 80th anniversary of Kristallnacht. A reminder then that it's not just here in France, but across Europe where this remains a dangerous thing to be wary of, and beyond Europe as well, even towards the United States.
Look, we just saw in the past week, a couple of weeks ago, we saw the 11 Jews murdered during worship at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. But in Germany, which is, the epicenter, it's where Kristallnacht happened, Germany and Austria, terrorizing of Jews, burning, as you said, of synagogues, looting, vandalizing, destroying of Jewish businesses. Angela Merkel, she spoke in Germany's largest synagogue on this anniversary. And I just want to show our viewers one of the things that she said. We've sadly become accustomed to the fact that every synagogue, Jewish school, kindergarten, restaurant, and cemetery needs to be either guarded by police or given special protection. Both Merkel and the president of Germany both called this, what they say, this rise in anti-Semitism, a potential rupture in civilization. And she knows from where she speaks. Angela Merkel obviously grew up in the former East Germany. A lot of the anti-Semitic incidents in East Germany, they're more reported in the eastern part of Germany than in Western Germany. Angela Merkel herself has been extremely vigilant on the front lines whenever any such anti-Semitic incident occurs, as has the German government in general. A recent survey was done that shows that 1 in 10 Germans, that anti-Semitism is still prevalent today in Germany. 1 in 10 Germans believe that Jews still, quote, exercise too much influence in society and that they, quote, they do not fit in among us, with us. So that, look, 1 in 10, you could say just 10%, but still, given the history and given the work that's been done in Germany, the education of students in schools, you could also argue that's a relatively high and slightly alarming number in circa 2018.
Doug, thank you very much indeed. Douglas Herbert there talking to us a bit about anti-Semitism.